The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. You are comfortably zoned with me, Ralph Tycho, the Zig Zag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland, in the northern part of the state, and where it's raining like hell and has been for the better part of 2 weeks. Intermediately, we get some sunshine and had some morning sun break through the clouds as I sat on the back porch / solarium.
Mm-hmm.
But it's at least it's not raining right now, and I'm cheered up by the fact that I have a returning guest who I like, Heather O'Brien. How are you?
Fine. My name is Ryan. No, I'm not O'Brien, but that's okay.
Well, you know,
all these Irish people are pretty much the same. You know, we're all kind of one big blob.
I'm one toke over the line. I get to be embarrassed about something every day, and this is no
that's
exception.
Okay.
I'd gladly start over and do the entire introduction again. If
no, it's all right.
Get it right.
It's my alias for today. It's close.
Okay. You're Elias, as we say in the baseball world. The Elias Bureau is...
Oh, yeah, the Elias Bureau.
...is one of the greats in accumulating statistics. And the one thing about baseball that I don't talk about it on my podcast very often about stats, but it is what weaves it all together. So that was my pun, alias and Elias. How have you been, Heather?
I've been good. Busy with this book, but things are coming together. And
for those of you who haven't listened to Heather and I, Heather is completing what would have been Mark Littell's, the late Mark Littell, our mutual friend Heather and I, his fourth book. And tell me how that's going, who are you meeting along the way to help you and help you get to know Mark a little bit. What's going on?
Well, I'm talking to a few of his former teammates and friends, and I talked to Whitey Herzog a couple of weeks ago for a long time. He was very interesting. I've talked to Dennis Leonard, Joel Youngblood, who Mark didn't play with, but he was a coach with at one point in the minors, and a whole bunch of other folks. So I'm collecting an interesting combination of points of view on Mark and some funny stories and some heartfelt stories. So it'll be good, I think, and I hope to include you in that.
Well, I know you'll have at least one interesting person to draw from, and that's Joe Youngblood, who was on my podcast a while back and is tremendously open and forthcoming and articulate. So
he was great.
You got a good interview with him.
Yep.
What did you learn about don't give away the book, don't give away the store, but what interesting things did you learn from Joel?
Well, he was very close to Mark, and they hit it off immediately, and they just had a lot of fun together on the field and off the field. And he said something like, if you asked Mark if he wanted to go jump out of a plane with you, he'd be like, sure, let's do it. I think they had kind of a wild time together.
And I know Mark would be thinking about the parachute later on. That would be
on the way down, right?
Right. Halfway down, it might occur to him, "Oh, I'm glad I have my nutty buddy on."
Right. Right. So that was interesting. But Joel was very articulate. I was quite impressed. So
well,
he had a lot of interesting things to say.
Good. I'm dying to know about Whitey Herzog a little bit. As I told you, I think way back that Whitey Herzog and I used to sit around my uncle's swimming pool in an apartment building right across from Shea Stadium on Northern Boulevard. It was a big red building, and my uncle had an apartment there, and I'd come home on leave from the Air Force. This is circa 1967, and Whitey was living in that apartment when he was coaching for the Mets, and we would chat just as neighbors almost, and I never had any inkling that I'd be doing what I'm doing, or I would have asked questions that were pertinent. But I would love someday to have him on the podcast and see if he remembers that talking to a little skinny Jewish kid in 1967.
No, you never told me that. I don't think you ever told me that story. I didn't know there was a connection.
Yeah, that's.
Well, Whitey is pretty along in years now. He's 91, I believe, and his assistant told me that at the foundation that bears his name told me that he doesn't give interviews anymore, but he wanted to talk to me about Mark, because when he heard that it was for Mark's book, he said that he would talk to me. So I managed to get special foot in the door because of the book.
Wow.
But he's pretty hard to get in touch with. But once I was talking to him, he was very open and very very helpful, and told me some stuff about because he managed him with two different teams, with both the teams that Mark played with, the Royals and the Cardinals, so he knew him very well.
Right, and I, as a longtime Met fan, an original Met fan, I wish he would have gotten the opportunity to, not that it didn't work out with Gil Hodges, but I certainly would have liked him to get an opportunity to manage after, in lieu of Yogi Berra. I think Whitey Herzog was much more competent to do that. Whitey Herzog came up in the Yankee organization, and he sat on the bench and learned from Casey Stengel, and he learned about the instructional league, and that's what Whitey Herzog got from Casey, and that's what he incorporated in his managerial tenures, where he would gather the best prospects before spring training and give them a special school, so to speak, where all aspects of baseball were covered, from bunting to hit and run to running on the base paths and what have you. So it would have been interesting to see how it worked out. There was something about M. Donald Grant that
something about him, I'll say.
that made things bad for a Met fan. To say nothing of the exit of Tom Seaver and what have you, and it was just unfortunate because they had an owner whose heart was in the right place. Joan Payson did that, and he unfortunately the person who was I don't remember where Grant came from, if he was her associate or what, but
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I know he was a wealthy guy who, belonged to the Greenwich Country Club and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he and I would hang there. Instead of hanging at my uncle's pool on Northern Boulevard, we'd hang in Greenwich every now and again. And I'd say, Joni, what's going on, darling?
How's it shaking, Joni?
Yeah, how's it shaking?
Yeah, because I remember Tom Seaver said something about how Grant was really ticked off at him for joining the Greenwich Country Club.
Oh.
He said something to him like, "How dare you? What makes you think that you can join the Greenwich Country Club?" To Tom Seaver.
It's almost funny if
I know it's like a horrible
didn't show
farce,
the class distinction between ownership and players, and you can imagine how folks like that responded when there was free agency. It was unbelievable, and the players were basically the shoes on the other foot. The cat was out of the bag, and it changed the dynamics of the game. But as Steve Cohen is proving, there's revenue coming in to justify paying all these big salaries. And as a Met fan, I'm delighted. It's almost unfair. It's almost like the Yankees with Steinbrenner. You feel like, wow, they have an excess of riches that I'm not used to. So we'll see how the baseball gods respond, or the goddesses.
Could be.
So what exactly?
About Whitey, I wanted to finish this because you were talking about owners, because he went on a couple of asides, and one of them didn't have to do with Mark, but it had to do with Ewing Kaufman, who owned the Royals, and he said that they didn't get along at all. And apparently Whitey had some clause in his contract that if the Royals got over 2 million attendance in a season, then he would get $50,000 in a bonus. And I guess he had worked this out with the general manager, and everyone signed off on it. But then the Royals did so well that they started to break 2 million each year. And Kaufman was really mad about this and resentful of the fact that he had agreed in this contract to pay Whitey $50,000 a year because of this attendance.
And who was responsible for the increase in attendance? I would have asked Ewing Kaufman.
Well, then Ewing Kaufman said, "Oh, well, you're not the one selling the tickets. You're just the manager, basically." Just the manager. So they didn't. He said every time he had some drinks, up in the press room, he'd get on Whitey's case about this stuff, and Whitey would say, "I don't know what the big deal is. You guys agreed to this, and you're getting 2 million attendance every year now for like 3 or 4 straight years." And Kaufman just couldn't get over this idea that he was being ripped off for $50,000, which is like chump change today, and to a multimillionaire back in the 70s, it probably wasn't that big of a deal either. But he just was so resentful of that. I was reminded of that because of the idea of the wealthy owners throwing money around, and I guess he didn't really like to throw money around, and he didn't. From what I understand, the Royals management was kind of like, well, if we're in the black, we don't really need to spend money on winning anything. We'll just keep attracting people to come to the ballpark, but we don't actually have to spend the money on the free agents so we can win the World Series. We're just kind of keep making money here. That was the mentality. But then when Whitey went to St. Louis, Gussie Bush was very into winning and did everything that he wanted, that Whitey asked him to do in terms of getting people. So he was in a lot better position. But that was an interesting sideline.
How are his spirits? Does he look back on things good-naturedly, or does he have a lot of angst about, different relationships? It doesn't sound like he was too upset looking back at his Ewan Kaufman trip.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think he seems very philosophical. I mean, he didn't seem resentful or angry at all, but he just sort of seems a little detached from what, I mean, it's been like many years now. And he probably, like any old baseball guy, regrets certain things that happened and, realizes that they would have gone differently if he'd made different choices. But the
overall
pretty happy.
tone of his spirit isn't that of somebody who's regretful. I hope. Good.
No, I didn't get that vibe at all. I also got the vibe that he's still a very, upbeat, together kind of person, even at 91, and he just has a very pleasant attitude about everything. So I think that he's probably gonna live to be like 105 or something, but outlive everybody else. But yeah, he's doing pretty well, I think, and he doesn't have any regrets.
I have a feeling that had he lived to a real old age, 91, that's getting up there, Mark would have maintained that kind of philosophical, good-natured, upbeat way about him.
Yeah, I think so. I think he had that attitude, that approach to life in general. But he had a lot of health problems, and I don't think Whitey has had that much in the way of health issues that I understand. Anyway, he seemed to be getting around pretty well at the reunion, the videos I saw of him at the 1982 reunion last summer. He had a cane, but other than that, he was
2002. Or 2000.
No, this was the reunion. This was the reunion of the 1982 Cardinals.
Oh, okay, that's sweet.
So
okay.
yeah, so I saw the video because Mark attended and was part of the celebrations and everything. And Whitey came marching out, with this cane, but other than that, he looked very fit and sprightly. So I was kind of shocked actually at 91. I was like, geez,
91,
wow.
Fit and straight, and if you're on the right side of the grave, you're considered in great shape at 91.
Right. Have you seen the picture? Did you see the picture that Mark posted of him and Keith Hernandez and Whitey?
I
can send that to you.
I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look at that.
It's just a snapshot that I think his wife Sana took. She took a lot of pictures of him with the guys, but Whitey looks great. It's kind of astounding. I mean, they all look good, but Whitey is like 30 years older or 25 years older. So
Jesus looking a little portly lately. I don't know if.
He's not to be bitchy or anything.
Yeah, no. I mean,
but he's getting on in years.
That doesn't sound. But I just remember him as the greatest fielding first baseman that I ever saw, and the one player that I really enjoyed from that 1986 season. Looking back, I mean Mookie, of course, but looking back, there were some scoundrels. It wasn't all drug related. There was some weird players on that team.
Really? I didn't know that. I mean, I thought a lot of the stuff came out because number one, they were so good and they won so many games, and they were perceived as arrogant, and of course the New York media and all this stuff. And I thought that they were kind of like the spotlight was kind of hyper focused on them, and so a lot of the stuff that would just be considered like normal ball player behavior was being shouted all over the place.
There was a book by Perlman.
Yeah, I know. I read that one.
Okay.
I wasn't terribly impressed with that one, but
no, it wasn't. But he didn't have much to work with.
Well, right, and it seemed like it was all kind of hearsay from, like Clubhouse Boys and gossip and rumors and all this kind of crap, so I wasn't all that impressed with that. But I think he was the one who kind of started to really pound this idea of, these guys being such bad boys and, such miscreants, and I don't really think they were that horrible from what I can gather.
Well,
but anyway.
Sometimes one sees what they want to see, and has. I'm not saying that that's the case. We never like to hear of the Kevin Mitchell stories with the Gooden and the Strawberry
right
escapades. I mean, we rooted for these guys. They were just our heroes.
Right.
So.
But they're up to shenanigans. I mean, most of them are. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and I don't
know how they are today so much. I think maybe in those days it was sort of the 70s, 80s were kind of an era of excess with a lot of sports people. And I think nowadays everyone is kind of like into their own little world with their headphones, their earbuds on the plane, and they don't really have these like little mini gangs in the teams like they used to. And so I think the culture has changed a little bit. But yeah,
one thing that changed the culture is that all the teams, all the players are making such astronomical money that it's hard to be competitive when you've made a family fortune for 4 generations down the line.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, I asked Mark once about Keith because Keith had I can't remember. Keith was talking on the Mets broadcast about this '82 reunion that he was going to last summer in Kansas City. I'm sorry, in St. Louis. And so I mentioned that to Mark. I said, Keith is really excited about this reunion that you guys are going to. And so we started talking about Keith, and I said, what is he like? I always kind of wondered what he was like. I mean, I'd read, a couple of his books and various books about him. But he's always been kind of like elusive character, And he said, he's funny. He's a really funny guy. He always would make me laugh on the mound. He'd come out to a mound visit and say stupid stuff and kind of just loosen me up and joke around. And he was very funny. So he said that I would like him. He said, just be careful. Just be careful if you ever meet him. But no, you'd like him. He said he's funny. You'd get along.
Good. He's very loyal to his brother. They have a great relation. And Keith and his brother. And,
his brother. Okay.
And it's something that I wish I had with my brother. Quite frankly, there's so I admire the relationship that they have and the respect they have for one another.
Mm-hmm.
That's just an editorial comment.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Mark's brother because they also had a very
I admire that also.
Mutual relationship.
I admire that also.
They fight all the time. They fought all the time, but they basically supported each other. I mean, they were only like a year apart, so they were kind of like almost what we call Irish twins,
I understand.
So they were pretty similar in nature. I mean, they were similar in nature, but I think Eric was the one who was the more scholastic character. He went to college and got a degree and didn't play baseball after college. And Mark, of course, wanted to play baseball and didn't didn't get any higher education. So they were kind of at odds in that respect. But
what do you suppose that Mark would have liked besides his health and mortality? He would have liked it turn out differently.
You mean in his career?
In his career, in his life, and he, without just off the top of your head, what would have been nice for Mark had it turned out differently?
Huh. Well, I don't know. He never really talked that much about his personal life, his marriages or anything like that. So I don't know how that would all, how he would consider any of that. That only came out in terms of the stories that he wrote for the book, and there weren't very many personal issues involved in the book stories. More, the family stuff with his brother, and but I don't know about. I think professionally, of course, was the Chambliss home run, which haunted him through his whole career. He wishes that he could have had that one back. Obviously.
He alluded to something on one of my podcasts that when he alluded to it, I meant to get back to it and never did. The question, he said something about he thought, or it was suspected, and I'm going to get back to it. I'll pick it up on a tape of the podcast, and I'll be able to speak to it better. But he said there was some sort of light that went on the scoreboard that Chambliss just may have been benefited by. What
That's
pitch,
interesting. Yeah, he never mentioned anything like that to me.
I am going to make a special attempt. It was one of the last podcasts I recorded with him, if not the last one. Mm-hmm. And it was, I remember it because it was one of those times when he did show this incredible disappointment. That he would always, well, I got over it, and I had a clubhouse thing where some people, I was pretty down for a while, but and I thought that's macho, and that's not in a negative way, but that's machismo, I meant to say. And so I'm going to put that, I'm going to look for what he says about, there was a light that went on, and he said, well, some people might say that was a part of it, and I'd never heard him make any excuses or anything until then, and it stuck in my mind. And as an interviewer, I was very disappointed in myself for not pursuing the topic. But as his friend, I have to be excused because there are some topics that when you talk to people that they're just not going to want to pursue or be comfortable with. And after all, I'm not Walter Cronkite. I just like to yak with people and kibitz. And that makes for a good podcast. It doesn't necessarily make for a good from a journalistic standpoint. But once in a while, I'll throw in a little journalism and opinions and what have you. But I don't I don't look for it. And when something surprises me, it's either I don't want to interrupt the train of thought that the interviewee has, or there's all kinds of contingencies that make for what I do.
Right.
Make up for what I do, and so that's
well,
why I will never give myself an A for any broadcast that I do or anything. I'll always look back and go, why did I interrupt? Why would this, that, and the other thing? Or why didn't I interrupt? Or so there's a lot of my heritage, my guilt that goes into what I'm doing.
Well, it's kind of...
And all of this nobody gives a rat's ass about. So let's talk about...
Well, right, that's another thing. But I mean, well, the other
wait a minute.
thing I was going to...
Don't agree that readily. But go ahead.
Oh, well, what I was going to say is that, I don't consider myself a journalist in the sense of my job is not trying to get the gory details of all the true facts out to people. My job in this case is just to support Mark's book and to get his writing out there in the way that he would want it to be presented. And so, trying to work for him in a sense, like editing his stuff in a way that reflects his sensibility. And his sensibility in his books was always to be positive and upbeat. And, you might say that's machismo, whatever, but it's actually more of a choice, like a mental discipline, I guess, to just try to work a positive message out of everything, even though he had a lot of challenges in his life, physical challenges and all kinds of stuff. And so I think he realized that he could sit around and mope about it, or he could actually try to move forward and compartmentalize some of the negative stuff away. So in his books, he made a point of saying that he didn't want to be like Boughton. He didn't want to, reveal all these dirty little stories and stuff. He said he could do that all day, but he wanted to present funny stories that would make people laugh and make people, have a sense of what it was like hanging out in the dugout in the clubhouse, and the camaraderie and that kind of stuff. So that was his artistic and literary choice. So my job in this case is to make sure that his writing is presented in that way. But in the course of last summer, he mentioned to me that he wanted to write a piece about the Chambliss home run again. And I said, well, why do you want to do that? Because you already, told all the details, in painful, detail in the first book. And he was very upfront about it, and what happened and how he was, completely devastated in the shower, and, everyone was trying to make him feel better and saying that it could have happened to anybody and all this kind of stuff. And, and he said, well, he wanted to mention that it has haunted him in the sense, he didn't use those words, but he 2 or 3 times a week, 40 years later, he would still get people mentioning to him. So, every time someone mentioned it to him, it would hurt. But he dealt with it and, just responded very politely and in a friendly fashion and didn't get all, upset about it. But, over time, that's got to wear on a person. So he wrote a little piece about this, which, is one of the last pieces that he finished. And I said, are you sure you want to do this? Because you've already done the Chambliss thing. He said, yeah, I think it's important for fans to understand what goes on with us, and to know that when they say things, it does kind of hurt. I mean, they don't know any better, most of them. He said most of them really just are trying to make a connection somehow, and they remember the scene because it was imprinted on everyone's minds, because it happened to be, it was kind of like a perfect storm, right? You've got New York, Yankee Stadium, playoff game. The TV video clips were just starting to get circulated at that point. And so then they get this clip of, people throwing things on the field and all this stuff. And then, there's this big dramatic home run, and then everyone runs on the field and rips the hell out of everything. So, this is all on video. So of course that is something that people watch all the time now on YouTube, and they just keep seeing this this very sensational clip over and over again. So it's kind of like, Bill Buckner's, the ground ball going through Buckner's legs. People watch this thousands and thousands of times, and that's what they remember about the whole series and the whole game. And, the Buckner's whole career basically is distilled in that one little clip. So
I'm reminded of Ralph Branca and Bobby Thompson, and
right.
I always thought of Mark in that sense,
right.
with the one pitch,
right. Well, and that famous photo of Branca, leaning on the wall. Yeah.
Pardon me?
That photograph of Branca after the home run I think it's in the clubhouse.
Sitting on the lying
he's like spread out on the yeah. And that is, I think, very to use a much overused word, iconic shot, because it encapsulates the absolute horror that must go through these guys' minds when something like that happens. But yeah, and then getting back to the reasons for the home run, I didn't hear anything about a light, but I did hear from both Mark and Dennis Leonard, I think, also said that it was very cold, and he was taking warm-up pitches, but the rhythm was kind of interrupted because of these people throwing stuff on the field, batteries, and play was suspended for, I don't know, I think maybe 8, 10, 15 minutes while they sorted things out and cleaned off the field, and the outfielders were kind of like standing around staring up into the stands wondering what was going on. And so he actually said to the catcher, Buck Martinez, he called him out and he said, let's just go in, and Martinez said, no, they're going to get it all straightened out soon. So there was this kind of like interruption in the rhythm and distractions. And, then the first pitch out of his hand is hit for a home run. So it's kind of, I don't really think that it needs to have anything more complicated than just a confluence of bad breaks. I don't think
was he offered warm-up pitches by the umpire because of the delay in the game?
I don't remember the exact. I have to go back and read he did have warm-up pitches. I think maybe the umpire allowed him to do that while they were cleaning up the mess. But it was not like a regular game at all. And another thing that Dennis Leonard mentioned to me was that it's hard to describe, I guess, but the pressure and the energy of a playoff game, especially in New York, is just super intense, and none of the young guys had ever experienced this before. So that was another big issue of being thrown into this maelstrom of New York playoff baseball. And also, Whitey mentioned that Hal McRae was in right field, and he was a replacement for Al Cowens, who I guess was much taller, considerably taller, 3 or 4 inches taller, because Amos Otis had hurt himself, so he had to shift people around in the outfield. So Hal McRae was playing in right, and he thinks if Al Cowens had been playing in right, he would have gotten the ball because it was only a few inches over McRae's glove. But,
wow.
Who knows? I mean, everybody has a theory. But,
well, I do know this.
But Whitey did say
Amos Otis, the aforementioned Amos Otis, was a New York Met involved in one of the worst trades they ever made when they traded him to Kansas City. I think it was Joey Foy, or I may have confused trades there, but Amos Otis and Paul Blair was owned by the Mets early on in his career. So,
I didn't know Paul Blair was. Yeah, I knew about Amos Otis. I don't remember the trade either. It's before my time. I have to go check. But yeah, he certainly worked out very well for the Royals. But yeah, and also Whitey had said that he said after he told me the story about the various height differentials, he said that's why they say baseball is a game of inches, because it really was in that case, and it just, the whole season was over just because of the few inches or a foot over the fence, in the right field fence at Yankee Stadium. But and also
that would be a great baseball is a game of inches. A great chapter.
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? Yep.
Yeah. And that's
also,
man, young lady.
Yeah, I know. What else did I want to say about him? Something about I can't remember now. I'll remember it in a second. But yeah, it was a very big deal for Mark, and he even mentions it in his book that he spent the whole off season kind of in a daze and just not really wanting to be around people, and he actually got accosted several times in the Kansas City area by waiters and a guy at a gym manager and stuff who would like have these angry fits at him and scream at him about losing the game, and I thought that was only a New York thing. I didn't realize that people were that obnoxious in Kansas City.
Talking about where's Toto and
I know. I thought it was like Philly and New York, in Boston. Those three cities I thought would be full of this kind of stuff. But yeah, so he got it from all sides. But and then he was traded to St. Louis, probably partially, because of that. And but then he came back and he had a good rest of his career. But it is hard to come back from something like that at age 23.
Oh yes. No question.
So this is a very long-winded answer to your question about what he would have changed.
He carried it as far as long as he did in his life.
Yes. Yeah, he did.
My doubts came, like I say, in the last interview or two that I did with him. His voice changed around the subject.
Yeah.
Whereas before, because we did a series of podcasts, and like I say, his entire persona has always been upbeat to me, and I miss him. I miss him terribly.
Yeah, he was a very interesting character, and I wish he was around to finish this damn book. This is the thing that fries me and just makes me so mad. It's like my first reaction when I heard that he had passed away was just total shock and grief and everything. But then my second reaction was, God damn it, he's almost done with the fucking book. Why? He's only like 3/4 of the way done with this book. So what are we going to do now? So
hey,
yeah.
You know what I say
really...
about the word fuck? Don't say F-U-C-K, or don't say fuck in front of the K-I-D-S.
The K-I-D-S, yeah. Yeah, we don't have any K-I-D-S. But anyway, so yeah, it was just really depressing to know that he was so close and just he still had stuff he wanted to write besides the book. So he was getting better, he was getting better as a writer. He was really enjoying it. He was having a great time writing. Until the various health things really brought him down that last summer. So, but yeah, so that was really frustrating.
This question before, but I simply don't remember the answer at the moment. So I'll ask you: if it weren't for baseball, what would Mark have done with his life?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of these. It came out just not overtly, but just in everything that he said, that he only ever thought about being a baseball player from when he was a little kid. He talks about that in the first book when I think he was 6 or something, when he first played in a game and got a hit and thought, this is great. I want to do this the rest of my life, basically. So I think like a lot of players, and a lot of people who never made it, in professional baseball at all. But it was his dream to make it to the majors, and he did. And he hung out for almost 9 years, which I think he said a couple of times.
He gave back to the game. He was a terrific instructor, an amateur instructor, and he got a big kick out of that. And it was all what his kick was about was in watching players develop and get better and get as good as they can be. I think that's how he worded it. Even the ones that didn't make it all the way, if they got as good as was their potential or what they could have been or what they never dreamed of being, that's a big hop, for a coach. So, hey, Heather, like I say, I miss him terribly.
Well, what did you want to tell me about what you wanted to impart in the book? Because I asked you if you had some stories, if you had some memories of him.
I do. As the Tops rep, meeting him it was the maybe first 4 or 5 years I was doing it. And I had been big leagued by a number of people. Not a great deal, but people I grew up watching, grew up enjoying. They, and I'm not going to mention any names, but they were just assholes. That's all. So Sorry, when you mean big league, what does that mean exactly? Big league, like they were,
arrogant?
Although they were no longer in the big leagues, coaches and what have you, managers of minor league teams would big league you. Like, I'm a big leaguer and you're a nothing.
That's what I thought. Okay, yeah, I never heard that expression before, but that makes sense.
They cover it up, whereas they wouldn't come out, overtly, because you have to get along with people. But I could tell I'm sensitive to stuff. So here I'm going. When I met Mark, he was a pitching coach in Stockton, California, a high A league, California league. And the first thing I did was I had trepidations on meeting Mark Littell, like I would, anybody else whose name I knew. Let's put it that way. And because you never know. And immediately, eye contact, smile, handshake, not like I'll blow you off. Handshake while making eye contact and smiling at the same time. So not many people can do that. It isn't exactly prima donnas. If you meet prima donnas, they don't have practice in humanity. And so I always expect that. And right away, boom, boom, boom. Oh, because I drop names. My boss, Cy Berger, invented baseball cards as we know it. And so I'd say, as was my wont, personal regards from Cy Berger. Oh, Cy, blah, 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 this, and we immediately became acquaintances. We would never, at that time, I could never say he was particularly friendly. I could never say that he said, here's a Southerner, and go, oh, let me hear your New York crap. I'll adopt. I'll change from being my views will change. We didn't even get into any of that. He was just just a super guy. That's the best way I can explain. And I remember I had a bunch. Tops would give me a shitload full of trading cards for each stop. Players, coaches would get boxes of gum, boxes of cards, and Mark says, "I'll trade you a box of cards for a box of these," and he had a Topps was putting out. This must have been '87 or so. Topps was putting out little mini cards, sets of like a replica of a regular set, except they were little mini cards. I had never seen before, and he's showing me what Topps has. Topps didn't even tell me about that. He says, "Trade you." Said, "You got it, country," because I knew that was his nickname. "You got it, country." And he laughed, and it was pleasant. And how, when I went into podcasting years later, how receptive he was to being on the air. And it was a new network, and just his name meant a lot. And one step further, when I was writing my own book, he was the first person, he and Peter Golenbach were the first people I asked to write forwards. And he was very, very happy. And just in write a few words, he went over it. He had somebody help him write it, if you will, like you advised him. He had someone else who he entrusted to make sure it was an excellent forward. And I was thrilled. I mean, Peter Golenbach and Mark Littell writing the forward of your book. It's like I'm Walter Mitty.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, so I'll always be appreciative of Mark because he was appreciative of me, and I'll always be appreciative of him as a human being because he was appreciative of me as a human being, and that's all I got.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, I agree. I agree with your assessment. So yeah, he was a very sensitive guy emotionally, and he would tune into other people very well, I think, because that's what Whitey was saying about how he would talk to. He didn't really see Mark in action coaching the minor league guys or the Australian guys, but he heard a lot about it, and he sat with him last 2 summers ago, I think. He said in a game in St. Louis, he happened to be in town, and so he heard that Whitey was there, so he went up to the box and sat with him in the suite and watched this game and talked to him through the whole 9 innings. And he said he was very observant about everything that was going on with the pitchers and what they were doing and what flaws he saw that he could fix, and how they should stand on the rubber and all this kind of stuff. And he was very analytical about it. So he thought that he would have made a really great pitching coach just because he was observant of people, and also he dealt with people very well. He could understand, what they were going through and be empathetic, because that's what I wanted to say before about Galen Cisco. I talked to Galen Cisco, and he talked about Whitey, and he said Whitey is one of these guys who's very unusual. He reacts to each player individually. Like he has basically, he sees the team as a group, but it's all a group of individuals, and he treats every individual the way that he wants to be treated, and that makes people very loyal to him, and he understands what they're going through, and he's a very empathetic kind of guy. So I think that's necessary to be a good manager. It's not just strategy and everything. You have to know like where the players are heads are at, and what their mood is, and so Whitey was very good about that, and I think Mark would have been good about that too. I mean, judging from the book where he wrote about all of his minor league coaching experiences, I think he just like didn't. He coached for a lot of different teams in various levels, but I think he just didn't stick around for very long in any place because he wasn't the kind of person to hold back at all,
He didn't enjoy the politics of it.
I think he would just tell people he would just tell people what was on his mind, and if it pissed them off, then it pissed them off, and then they got rid of him. But I mean, he would put the pitchers foremost in his mind, but everything, all the hierarchy, the structure, and everything, he just didn't really deal with that very well, and he didn't hold anything back. So I think that kind of hampered him in terms of being a long-term pitching coach for any one team. But I mean, these coaches have very short tenures anyway, generally.
Right.
They disappear when the manager gets fired. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, hey, O'Brien. Forget
my new name.
your new name around here. We're running short on time. I gotta let you go, but
right.
Please come back again soon, and I'm sure you will. I love yakking ball with you. I love it.
I love talking to you too, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And I will take what you said today about Mark and turn it into a little piece and send it to you, and you can sign off on it. And we'll include it with everybody else.
I trust you. You don't even have to send it to me. I'd love to read about it.
All right.
Thank you again.
Well, thank you.
And
Good
thank
luck.
you, everybody, for listening. It's Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The guest is Heather O'Brien, and it's a pleasure. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for listening. Come back and see us when you do, or even listen to us. That'd be great.
I will do so.
All right. Adios. And
adios.
Happy trails.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.